When it comes to the classic Twilight Zone series, there are tons of fan favorites. But what I wanted to do today was go a bit deeper and give a rundown on my favorite underrated Twilight Zone episodes. So, the following 10 picks may not be the most well-known or the most popular, but in my view, they're still worth checking out. Submitted for your approval, my top 10 underrated Twilight Zone episodes. Number 10 on my list is In His Image. This unnerving episode starred George Grizzard as Alan Talbot. Alan is a seemingly average man leading a normal life. However, within the first few minutes, you know you're in for a trip through Crazy Town.
Oh, the devil means to have you, mister, but I won't let him. Listen to me, mister. It's salvation I'm talking about. No!
The story's kickstarted when Alan throws a woman into the path of an oncoming train. From there, we watch as Alan's world slowly unravels. Why did Alan toss a woman onto the train tracks? Why is he continuing to have murderous urges? Why is he hearing strange noises in his head? How come memories of his hometown don't match up with reality? This is an episode that features many fascinating mysteries that thankfully lead to a satisfying conclusion. In fact, I think it's an ending you won't see coming. In His Image is a Twilight Zone that was tailor-made for die-hard sci-fi lovers. Number 9 on my list is The Hunt. This episode fits in among the more heartfelt and sentimental of the Twilight Zones. It starred Arthur Honeycutt as Hyder Simpson, who's been married to his wife Rachel, as played by Jeanette Nolan, for 50 years.
Long time to travel together.
Well, I wouldn't have had it any other way.
And for all the dog lovers out there, we can't forget Hyder's beloved hound dog Rip, who's actually a pretty important member of this cast. Everything about these characters is down to earth, from the little cabin that they live in to the way Hyder and Rachel interact.
When's the last time you got yourself kissed?
Well, the way I figure it, it was in the spring of 1924.
Well, I figure you got one coming.
Don't you come near me, old man.
Despite fears over bad omens that Rachel had been having, Hyder still takes Rip out on their daily raccoon hunt. Turns out he should have listened to his wife. As Rod Serling bluntly stated in the open narration, these hunters would not be returning home. As the story moved along, we learned that the journey for this old man and his hound dog had only just begun. There's an old-fashioned charm and simplicity to this entire tale. I'd say it's one for the faithful and one for the animal lovers. Number 8 on my list is The Fear. This one's pretty significant to Twilight Zone fans. It's actually the final episode written by the series' creator and coolest narrator in existence, Rod Serling. Fear obviously played a huge part in many Twilight Zone shows, which makes sense. Fear is one of our most basic survival responses, and if there's one thing we humans fear most, it's the unknown. And to Peter Mark Richmond and Hazel Court, who star as Trooper Franklin and Charlotte Scott.
What is it?
Take a look at this.
The Trooper was investigating Miss Scott's claims of strange lights around her cabin. Since this is the Twilight Zone, we know damn well those strange lights are going to result in something bizarre. And by bizarre, I mean the Trooper and Charlotte are seemingly stalked by a giant.
I can't believe it.
Number 7 on my list is Death Ship. This is another Twilight Zone that's perfect for sci-fi fans. However, fans of psychological horror will find something to like here as well. This episode starred Jack Klugman, Ross Martin, and Fred Bear. We see 3 explorers' routine mission quickly turn into a nightmare. On the surface of the planet, they find a wrecked ship. The ship is an exact duplicate of their own. Naturally, they head inside to investigate, only to find deceased duplicates of themselves inside. Needless to say, this story is a deep dive into eerie territory. The twist ending is also one that is guaranteed to stick with you. If you're seeking an all-out assault on your sanity, look no further than the episode And When the Sky Was Opened. Rod Taylor, Jim Hutton, and Charles Aidman were the stars, but when you watch this, keep an eye on the main players. Up front, it's reported that the experimental rocket ship, the X-20, mysteriously disappeared from radar for 24 hours. Ultimately, the ship and the 3 astronauts on board returned and there was a crash landing. Now, what exactly happened to the X-20 during that time is a mystery. But the more pressing concern, as this chilling tale unfolds, is what's happening to the 3 survivors. Something went very wrong while they were lost in the stars, because one at a time, these 3 men are each being erased from existence.
This is a gag. This is a big, earth-shaking, highly complicated, and fantastically conceived practical joke, isn't it?
So is the universe itself correcting some kind of a mistake? What the hell happened to these guys while they were up there? This is definitely one of the more disturbing stories, and it's one that definitely doesn't shy away from cosmic horror.
I remember how excited I was before I was done. I couldn't sleep for nights. I finally chose number 12. I guess that's everybody's favorite.
Number 12 looks just like you, is not very nuanced, everything it has to say is very bold, and laid bare for all to see. But I didn't mind that at all. The story took place in a future society where the standard is for everyone, and I do mean everyone, to undergo an operation at age 19 to become beautiful in a process known as the transformation. Colin Wilcox played Marilyn. She desperately wants to hold on to her own identity, but she's up against a world of beautiful people who will not allow that to happen. She's basically the last sane person left in a dystopian world where everyone chooses their Barbie or Ken look and blissfully glides through life drinking cups of instant smile.
What you need is a glass of instant smile.
Everyone from Marilyn's mother to her best friend are all forcing her to conform. But they're doing so with creepy smiles, vacant expressions, and manipulative, passive-aggressive language.
She looks at herself and she's horrified. Isn't that so? Of course.
The story is clearly a knock at everyone obsessed with remaining eternally young through plastic surgery, bodybuilding, and any other means. Number 4 on my list is The Lonely. This slower-paced but fascinating story was about an inmate named James Corey, as played very well by Jack Warden. The year is 2046, and Corey has been convicted of murder and sentenced to solitary confinement on an asteroid for 50 years. Coincidentally, that's the same amount of time Hyder Simpson was married to his wife Rachel.
When's the last time you got yourself kissed?
Anyway, 4 times a year, Corey gets a supply visit from Earth, and you can bet he loves these visits. After all, the title of the episode is The Lonely, so it goes without saying, Corey's going out of his mind and longs for companionship of any kind. Well, his wish is granted in the form of a robot woman. It's a story that touches on some deep subject matter. For instance, the mechanical companion, Alicia, who was gifted to Corey to help make his solitary confinement more humane, was an excellent inclusion. Alicia is capable of emotions and memory, so the episode ponders a topic that many sci-fi stories have, Star Trek most notably. Can a sentient, artificial life form ever truly be considered human?
You're just like this heap. A hunk of metal with arms and legs instead of wheels. And that's all you are. A reminder to me that I'm so lonely I'm about to lose my mind.
The episode also delves a bit into the morality of solitary confinement. In this case, we have a future where criminals are blasted off to distant asteroids to serve out their sentences. Corey was convicted of manslaughter, but he claimed it was self-defense. In any case, we're left to question if his punishment is cruel and unusual. An all-around great and very underrated episode. Number 3 on my list is 100 Yards Over the Rim. Twilight Zone featured a number of time travel stories, but this lesser-known episode was yet another fun addition to the collection. It starred Cliff Robertson as Chris Horn. Robertson, of course, is best known as the ventriloquist from The Dummy, and of course, who can forget him as Uncle Ben. We open in the year 1847. Chris is a pioneer from a wagon train who sets off to find water for his son who is deathly sick. 100 yards over the rim, he stumbles into present-day New Mexico. What I like best about this episode is that it highlights the nightmarish life of early pioneers who faced danger, disease, and starvation at every turn. It also shed a light on how most any modern convenience that most of us take for granted would have been a heavenly gift for people born in those days. I even liked how they pulled off the time travel aspect. Nothing flashy whatsoever. Chris simply walks over a sandhill and boom, he was in the future. The Shelter was a classic episode. It fits perfectly alongside the monsters of Doom on Maple Street. In Rod Serling's closing narration for this story, he stated, "For civilization to survive, the human race has to remain civilized." That's an idea we see truly hammered home in this intense story about a family whose neighbors basically turn on them during a time of crisis. Appropriately so, the story unfolded in a typical suburban community. In the opening, we're introduced to physician Bill Stockton, as played by Larry Gates. It's all fun and games as Bill, his family, and their closest neighbors celebrate his birthday. Unfortunately, the good times come to a screeching halt when a civil defense announcement is made that unidentified objects have been detected headed for the US. In no time, we watch as fear, panic, and chaos ensues. Bill and his family safely prep their shelter, but guess what? Nobody else has bothered to make a shelter. Now, they need a shelter too. And, well, you know where this is going.
Please, Bill, you've got to help me. I've got to keep my family alive. We won't use any of your stuff.
What about air? That's a 10-by-10 room, Jerry, with an air filter designed to supply 3 people. Will you bring your own air?
Well, just give us a chance.
No.
48 hours, Bill.
This was an unforgettable episode that spotlights the ugliness of humanity that's just under the surface, and how quickly people are prone to primitive, nasty, and downright violent behavior. On a lighter note, I have to mention this episode was famously parodied on The Simpsons to great comedic effect. Do you find wax figures to be creepy as hell? Well then, number 1 on my list, the new exhibit is sure to make your skin crawl. This was a Twilight Zone that played out as a straight horror story. It's as close as Twilight Zone ever came to Alfred Hitchcock Presents, or perhaps a more modern comparison would be American Horror Story. This episode was about a museum worker named Martin Seneschal, as played brilliantly by Martin Balsam of Psycho fame. Martin has an unhealthy obsession with a creepy set of wax figures at his workplace. The wax figures are from the exhibit Murderer's Row. In fact, Martin is so obsessed with these nightmarish figures that he literally takes them into his home after the museum is forced to shut its doors. Obviously, this is not something his wife is thrilled about.
Every time I come down here and look at them, I just about have a heart attack. The way they stand there and stare at me, they're frightening.
But Emma, they're supposed to be frightening. Let me tell you this. When you live with them, as long as I have, you come to love them.
As the chilling story plays out and the murders begin, the question becomes, who's really to blame? This was an episode which was served well by the extended time. It featured top-notch performances, it was well executed, no pun intended, and it's a solid tale for fans of old school horror. So that's my top 10 list of most underrated classic Twilight Zone episodes. If you're in the mood for some in-depth reviews of Rod Serling's Tales from the Fifth Dimension, then check out my Twilight Zone Marathon of Reviews, which covers the classic episodes in greater depth. Hit like and sub if you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching, be well, stay safe, and take care. Later.